Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt Stryker. His name's Joe Pisapia. No matter what's going on in your world, don't let anything bring you down. This may very well be the best time of the year until a few weeks from now. But any way you look at it, Joe, there's nothing like the playoffs. And quick reminder, at SportsGrid TV, for those of you that are new or haven't jumped on yet, those are our social media handles. Make sure you give us a follow when you get the chance, because I promise you, Joe Pisapia is going to drop knowledge. He's the author of the Fantasy Black Book series, so you get an opportunity to sit and listen to him talk. You're going to want to remember all this and have it in your hand. That's why our social media and our app are the way to go, because it's basically like taking Joe Pisapia, shrinking him down, putting him in your pocket, and taking him with you wherever you go. Joe, would you enjoy that?
Well, depending on whose pocket I was in. Yes. Yeah, I think that's the biggest part. Your pocket, absolutely not. Although, who knows in your pocket what might lurk in those recesses. You never know with Matt Stryker. Some certain trips to some certain states. You never know what's going on there. But anyway, yes, we did have playoff football started yesterday and some good games too. The one seeds finally got off their rear end and played some football. And first game, Baltimore Ravens certainly showed their dominance in the second half. They held the Houston Texans without an offensive touchdown. The one touchdown they had was on the special team side of things. And give Houston credit. Defense played great in the first half of that football game. Yes. Inspired football, but they put enough pressure on C.J. Stroud. They did a great job of covering Nico Collins. And you could tell at halftime the confidence in Harbaugh was really just glowing. Even though it was a tie game, even though it was very close there, they said, well, you know, I think we got a good game plan. I think things are going to go well. And guess what? They did. And they stuck to the game plan, and Lamar took over that game with his legs, with his arm, and that's why he's probably going to be the MVP of the league. So great job by the Baltimore Ravens. They look dominant. Now, the other game, in the later evening, Green Bay Packers had that game in tow. Let's be honest here. Brock Purdy did not play well. Even that big, pass that he made, he threw a ball where there were 4 white jerseys, and that was not the most advisable throw. Brock Purdy did not play well. Christian McCaffrey broke a big run. Other than that, the 49ers looked very beatable, and the Green Bay Packers took them to their limit, and a missed field goal was really the difference in that game at the end of the day. And look, give the Niners credit. The defense did play tough. Especially in the second half, they put more pressure on Jordan Love. Jordan Love at the end of that game, too, making one of the classic mistakes of, you can't go to the right and throw to the left. Like, you just can't do that. You can't throw balls across your body. You're better off just throwing the ball away, living to play another down. But again, that's that thing in the young quarterbacks, right, where you're trying to say, I want to make a play. I want to make something happen instead of understanding the circumstances and trying to have a little discipline there. So it's unfortunate because it was a great season for the Packers. They were not supposed to be there. They were not supposed to get this far. And they did, and credit to them. And honestly, they should have won that game. So maybe a good wake-up call for San Fran. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, between the injury to Deebo Samuel, which we'll get more information about, I'm sure, in the days ahead, plus the performance of Brock Purdy, I don't know, Matt. I mean, it was definitely one of those things where you kept watching and going, the 49ers better get their stuff together, because if they don't, they're going to lose this football game, and they almost did. What are your thoughts from what you saw yesterday in the action?
Matt, look, you hit the nail on the head. From a wagering perspective, always trying to keep this show on the track. I think this is going to change the way a lot of people are going to be placing some future bets in the coming days. It really is. And, of course, we have to wait to see what the matchup looks like. But to your point, vulnerability, I think, creates an influx in the market. And that's why we're here, Joe, to try to calm those waters. But I'm with you 1,000%. I really am. And if you go on social media, which I tend to try not to do, there are people really clamoring for explanations here. But either way, as you like to say, it's the story of the game, and the story of the game goes on. So what other news do we have?
Well, I mean, the other news, too, as you mentioned, too, from the wagering standpoint, I mean, Houston did obviously not cover that 9.5. We thought that might be the closer of the two. But obviously the Green Bay Packers did. They had that, I think it started off at 10 and it moved to 9.5 in some markets too. So Green Bay kept it close, and Green Bay is going to be a problem because this is a young team. So LaFleur has positioned them in a really good spot here. They have a young squad They probably have to address the running back position next year, get a little younger, get some more depth there. Sure. They probably have to work on the secondary a little bit there. But they've got something special, and it's a division that's kind of still open for season. Minnesota Vikings, we'll see what they do in this offseason. It's going to be interesting whether they keep Cousins or not. I think they will. I think they learned how hard it is life without Kirk Cousins. The Bears started to come on strong in the second half, and then you have the Detroit Lions who won that division. So the Packers are going to be a problem in the NFC if Jordan Love continues to play that well. But I think it was a good learning experience for Jordan Love last night, which is, when you get to these spots in the game here towards the end, you have a certain amount of timeouts left, a certain amount of time left. Not everything has to be the play at the end of the day, that you have to try to do too much, because at the end of the day, it becomes your undoing. But credit to the Packers, man. They really, again, they had this game. If you're a Packers fan, this was frustrating, I'm sure, because you had them on the ropes there and you just didn't finish the job. I understand the weather was tough. I understand, kicking in the rain's not the easiest thing and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to make the most of those moments, and they just fell a little bit short. Also, coaching news. That's the big thing in the NFL. Bill Belichick having a second interview with the Falcons. Apparently, going to 9 Super Bowls is not enough on your resume. You got to go for that second interview. You got to get that call back. Matt knows this. He used to go on a lot of auditions and things like that, for a lot of big roles. It was him. It was Tom Cruise. Sometimes John Hamm, they'd all be in the same room together. But that's, Bill Belichick's second interview. Like, does the resume not speak for itself?
Well, like, is it Belichick second interviewing the Falcons? I think that's what it's here. Listen, this is what I want to do. This is who I need. Are you okay with it?
Well, that's interesting. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's a perspective I had not thought of. But we talked about it last week on the show, right? We had the big question, the round table. Where should Bill Belichick end up? Where makes the most sense? And the answer was the Falcons. And 2 days later, he was obviously, everyone's listening to the show. We know this. Arthur Blank, big fan of the show. Bill Belichick, big fan of the show. And there they go. Hey, Art, how's it going? Love the $1.50.
Who's the quarterback, though, Joe? If everyone's listening and watching, who's the quarterback? And who does Belichick want as the quarterback?
To me, I think it's going to be something like a Jacoby Brissett or a Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody like that. Maybe they'll make the big splash move for a Justin Fields, maybe. I think that would be the smart thing to do, because that would give you a dynamic of what you need in the league right now. And what you need is a mobile quarterback. It is really tough now to win if you don't have that mobile quarterback. If you look around the league and what's going on here, at least mobile. I mean, some of these guys, you still get the Kirk Cousins of the world who still have a lot of success. You still get some of these guys that will stand in the pocket. Brock Purdy's more of a stand in the pocket kind of guy. But it's the Lamars and the Justin Fields and the Josh Allens of the world. They're dominating the league. Also, speaking of returns, you've got Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni both coming back after disappointing finishes to the seasons. The Eagles and the Cowboys made the playoffs. The Eagles and the Cowboys were out in the first round of the playoffs. So McCarthy coming back on that 1 year. Your thoughts on that 1 year remaining on his contract, not getting the extension? Do you think it's going to be an ugly ending to McCarthy in Dallas this time next year?
It has been such a drama for this organization since I was aware that this organization existed. It comes to a point where, who was that? Skip Bayless threw his Cowboys jersey in the trash a year or two ago.
No,
my psyche has gone to that. I don't care until they win the whole thing, Joe.
There you go. It doesn't care, but hopefully you'll win the whole thing at DFS, because when we come back, we're going to talk about some core plays for the Sunday games. We got 2 games on the slate, 2 big ones too. So when we return, we're going to go break down the names you need for your lineups of Conyware for FS2 right after this.
The Lions were going to blow out the Rams, and in the first half I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game, and I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
let's look out and see what happens with the Lakers. They've got to make a move, folks, because if you think this team, that they're going to run out night after night, is going to win the Western Conference, I can't see it, folks. I don't even know if they even make the Final 8 of the playoffs with the way they've been playing. There's got to be major changes made in La La Land, but there isn't a lot of tradable parts.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline, and I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The Early Line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell,
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
You have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid
We did.
information. Did like the 2.5. Jumped on.
There's no taking weeks off in golf betting, ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Stryker and Joe Pisapia with you here, doing the yeoman's work, the tough stuff, building a Sunday DFS core lineup. Now, Joe, I know a lot of people like to mix the two here, but for those that are playing this in isolation, let's have that conversation. So let's talk about Patrick Mahomes at 7,700 on FanDuel for the Chiefs, and talk about, because off air coming into the segment, you were saying how all Kansas City needs is Patrick Mahomes. So is it safe to say that however many lineups you're playing today are going to feature Mahomes? Go.
Look, I think you have to have the Mahomes lineup right away. You know, you've got Kansas City, Buffalo, you've got Detroit, Tampa, right? So typically you see at some point one of these games is going to go sideways. Yesterday, none of them went sideways, right? Both big favorites ended up winning at home. Okay, but we've learned enough, and we watched enough NFL playoffs where all these games aren't going to go to every single home favorite. It's just not going to happen. So I think Kansas City is that perfect one, too, where I want to be in on Kansas City. I think Kansas City people are, I think there's a fatigue in the marketplace, when you're so good for so long. And I think this is the perfect antidote to what has been a weird season for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs have been measured now by Super Bowl appearances and Super Bowl wins. The Chiefs are measured now by not just winning games, but how much they're winning games. I think it kind of took its toll on them this season. I think things just really didn't click. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. The perfect thing for the Kansas City Chiefs was to have that Week 18 kind of off, to play in sub-zero temperatures against Miami Dolphins, kick the crap out of them, and then become underdogs on the road. This is Patrick Mahomes' first road game in the playoffs in his career. So drink that in for a second. That's how good the Chiefs have been. So now you've got an opportunity where they're playing underdog. They're playing spoiler. They're playing chip on the shoulder. Oh, wait, you don't think we're good enough to beat the Buffalo Bills? We're the underdog in this game? The team that goes to the Super Bowl all the time? The teams that win rings all the time? Okay, this is exactly what Andy Reid needs. I think it's exactly what the Chiefs need, which is to get out of their head, to get back to basics, and to be the underdog. And I love Mahomes. Now, look, the pivot point is to go cheaper here and look for the other upset, which could be the Tampa game, because Tampa has enough weapons to really pick apart that weak secondary of the Detroit Lions. So Baker Mayfield very much in play in this game too. But Mahomes is the one that I'm going to go with. And Mahomes pairing him with either Kelce or Rushy Rice makes the most sense to me. It's just what we've seen. Also, the Buffalo Bills sustained a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the football last week in that game against Pittsburgh. That was a very tough injury attrition game. Some of those guys are back, some aren't. But I think this is the big thing to look at here, which is where are you going to put your money? At the end of the day, I want to put the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands. And Josh Allen has been brilliant. The problem with Josh Allen is the salary. So Josh Allen, last week on the show, we talked about predictions for Josh Allen, what he was capable of doing. We talked about him having, 2 touchdowns on the ground and 2 touchdowns in the air. Well, he had 4 touchdowns. At the end of the day, Josh Allen did exactly what we thought he was going to do. And this is a great rivalry, and we don't have as many of them as we used to have back in the day. Back in our day when we were kids, we had a lot of these. But the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs has become one. This is another chapter in that story, and I think this is going to be a really fun game this evening. And I'm going to put my money where Patrick Mahomes is, and Patrick Mahomes is on the road, and I think this is a really interesting spot here for them to kind of play underdog, which is a role they haven't played in so many years. I think it's exactly the antidote. It's exactly the medicine that this team needs after a pretty shaky season that still saw them make the playoffs quite easily.
All right. Well done, Joey. As always, let's continue to build. You mentioned weaponry. And again, during the break leading into the show here, we were talking about what type of weaponry Buffalo will show. And you've arrived at a running back at 6,800 on FanDuel as we continue to build our lineup here. Talk to me about James Cook.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about James Cook. Rashad White is basically the same price as 6,700. Rashad White's going to have to work in the pass game a lot, which is something he's capable of doing. But again, if you look at the Detroit front, they're second in the league against the rush. They're good up front. So that's going to be a tougher day at the office. Now, James Cook, on the other hand, he's going up against the 18th ranked rush defense of the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a much better matchup. Leonard Fournette has been tossed aside, so that experiment is over. Last week against Pittsburgh, 18 carries for 79 yards, 4 catches. Now, he only had 5 yards receiving there, but the catches matter for points, especially on DraftKings, too, if you're playing on there today. So he only had 10 points last week in a half-point PPR, but the one thing I will say, if you had the touchdown, all of a sudden it becomes 16. So the problem with James Cook is always Josh Allen. Josh Allen robs James Cook of some touchdown equity that he has. So it's got to be a big break, a big play, or a catch for him to really score. But I think that's available for him. Again, it's a softer matchup for James Cook. If you look at the rest of the running backs on the slate, Isaiah Pacheco has been great. He runs hard. The Buffalo Bills are middling. Again, they're 15th against the rush. He's going to get carries. It's going to be cold there today. It's Buffalo in January. But I think Buffalo has to learn its lesson, which is if you don't establish the run in Buffalo in the cold weather in January, you can't win. And they learned this lesson last year in the snow against the Cincinnati Bengals, you would think. So it's time to run the football if you're the Buffalo Bills. This is what you have to do. This is why those Bills teams were so successful back in the early mid-90s. They had Thurman Thomas running the football all over the place, catching the football all over the place. It's cold. It's January. It's Buffalo. Keep the ball on the ground, drain clock, keep that defense out there getting winded. That's the success there. Now, Pacheco is a good investment too. He's 7,500. He's had 2 really good games back-to-back. He's going to get the football a ton, but the problem is, again, he's a little bit more expensive. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are both in that $7K range as well. Gibbs, I think, is the one I prefer out of the 2 of those guys. But looking at it right now, I think the best bang for your buck is James Cook. But what James Cook has to do today has to get to that 15 to 18 carry range. I think he's going to. And then he's got to have that 4 to 5 target range. I think that's also in the cards too, because we assume this total is going to get pushed. Now, I think both these games are going to have overs. I think both these games have a really good opportunity to hit that mark because of the way these teams are structured. So that's a good thing for everybody in fantasy. It's a good thing for a lot of overs today as well. But I think Cook is a really important piece.
All right. Well done, as always. And thank you for the pivot there. People didn't catch it. That Rashad White, you said, was at $100 less, 6,700 in comparison to 68. So, as always, that's why we tell you with the app and follow us, because those things might slip by. We're like, wait, what did Joe say? So there you go. We brought it forward. Okay, let's continue the conversation. We started building this lineup with Patrick Mahomes. People are more than likely going to try to stack that with Rushy Rice, but you're offering receivers from the other game, 2 of them actually on opposite sides of the ball. So let's start with Amon-Ra St. Brown, 9,200 on FanDuel. Talk to me about Amon-Ra St. Brown and see if you can sprinkle in a little if we can get Rice in the lineup.
Look, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must. You were talking about how you start lineups. I think you started with Amon-Ra today. Amon-Ra has been fantastic. You look at the game log, he's been absolutely brilliant, and he's going up against the 29th ranked pass defense. So Amon-Ra is in play. Look at the targets, 14 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, 9. He's had 12 catches, 6, 7, 7. He's gone over 100 yards 3 of his last 4 games. He's a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games. Amon-Ra is the guy you start every lineup with. And on the other side, Mike Evans is a tremendous play as well, because I mentioned before, the other side is not good either. So Rice and Amon-Ra are all in this block here. If you want to go down a quarterback to Baker Mayfield, you can work all these guys in your lineup. Mike Evans is a little bit more boomer bust. I still prefer Evans, though. He has more touchdown equity, going up against the 27th ranked pass defense here of the Detroit Lions. Neither secondary is very good. Ford Field has played a lot more like Coors Field, a ton of overs this year, a ton of points. So keep that in mind. That building is like that. And I kind of worry a little bit about the Detroit Lions, because my concern with them, Matt, is after such an emotional big, we finally got our playoff victory. You saw how the celebrations were going on there in the streets, in the crowd, even the GM in the elevator just freaking out like they won the Super Bowl. And that's great. They deserve that. It's been a long time coming. But can you pump the air up back into the balloon? Can you be ready to win this game today after all that emotion? That's that you accomplish something. Well, you haven't really accomplished anything yet by the standards of what we're supposed to be judging you. It's a really interesting situation. And Baker Mayfield, to me, is like the last guy you want to see, because he doesn't care. He's playing with house money. Talk about not supposed to be there. Baker Mayfield is not supposed to be in the playoffs, and he's certainly not supposed to be in round 2. So that's a dangerous spot. Lastly, Sam Laporta. Look, if he's healthy, it's hard not to like Sam Laporta in this game. The tight ends today, outside of Kelce, it's Kelce, it's Laporta, it's Kincaid. Those are the 3 places you want to go. If you want to throw some one-offs there on Dawson Knox to get a touchdown, or a Cade Otton, okay, that's fine too, and you might have to. But tight end is tricky because you have the top guys, and you have all those high-end wide receivers. So it's a tricky day for DFS, but those are the core plays. We return more FST on SportsGrid.
The Lions were going to blow out the Rams, and in the first half I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game, and I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Look out and see what happens with the Lakers. They've got to make a move, folks, because if you think this team, that they're going to run out night after night, is going to win the Western Conference, I can't see it, folks. I don't even know if they even make the final 8 of the playoffs with the way they've been playing. There's got to be major changes made in La La Land, but there isn't a lot of tradable parts.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline, and I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy.
The early line.
And what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell, coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
in-game live.
Just
prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
that was
late
good
night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on.
There's no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in FST Fantasy Sports. Today, Matt Stryker and Joe Pisapia doing what we do each and every week. We built the DFS lineups. I understand what kind of day it is, so for the wagerer out there, this is where we cash, Joe. It's time for fantasy over-under. It's simple. Give you a player, give you a stat and a scenario, and then I turn Joe loose. I honestly think, Joe, this is where you shine. So let's go. Jared Goff. 279 and a half passing yards. Does he go over or under that for the indoor cat, Joe?
Yes, the indoor cat, Jared Goff. That's the most important thing. We don't want Jared Goff playing in Buffalo. No. Do not let that happen to Jared Goff. No, it's too cold. It's too cold.
Are you kidding me?
You know, it's postmenopausal Jared Goff. He was like,
can I just do that the whole segment?
You can.
Cardano's texting me.
Please
stop
don't.
me out.
It's very upsetting. Yeah, we're getting all of it right here. But here's the thing. Jared Goff indoors, look, we know the stats. We see what it is. And he's going against a secondary that's not very good. Now, this number is really good. I'm going to be honest. Like, sometimes you see those numbers, you go, ooh, that's perfect. And this is kind of where it is. But I'm going to still lean towards the over here on this one. 277 last week against the Rams. And, you know, last week, that game got started off like a firecracker and then kind of petered out there. It was just kind of smoke in the second half. So really didn't have to push the football as much. 320 in the game before that against Minnesota, 271 the game before that. So he's gone over this in 3 of his last 5 games. So again, it's a really good number, but because that secondary is weak with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming to town, and because we talked about Ford Field being a place where the totals are high, they're going to go back and forth. Does Baker Mayfield have enough weaponry to match him and push this total? I think the answer is yes. So unless you think Detroit is going to win this in a 30-10 fashion, kind of like we saw, you know, yesterday where, you know, they just opened up whoop-ass, all the cans, the Baltimore Ravens did in the second half of that game. Unless it's going to be like that, Jared Goff's probably going to go over this number. I would not alt-line this. I would not push it to 300 necessarily, because I think what you want to do is balance out this offense. You want to make sure Gibbs and Montgomery and everybody are working in this offense. So I think that's an important thing. So sometimes you see a number that's a little too low and you want to do the alt yards, go over 300. You think they can go past it. With Jared Goff in this contest, again, this number is really good. I think it's spot on. I would lean towards the over. I think he gets to the 280s, maybe even the 290s. 300 might be tricky today, though, because there is going to be, I think, as I mentioned in the last segment, right? Maybe you come out a little flat after all the emotion last week. You haven't won anything yet. You did win the playoff game. I know it's a big deal, Detroit, and you should celebrate it. It's fun. You get the monkey off your back. But now what? How do you refocus them? And I'm sure Dan Campbell, that's been the task of Dan Campbell all week now. How do I refocus everybody? How do I get everybody back and understand, okay, that was great, but that's not the ultimate goal? And I think he can do that. I think this coaching staff is capable of doing that. And I think that he understands the bigger picture, and I'm sure he understands that. But Baker Mayfield's going to be dangerous. And I think this Tampa team is dangerous as well, because that's a team that, you know, did just come off beating the Eagles at home. And I know people have talking about the Eagles having their issues, but as that game went on, they continued to open things up. And by the end, it was not close at all. So Tampa's going to be dangerous in this one. I think, again, we saw 2 games go right to script with the 2 big favorites, the 2 1 seeds, handled their business off a bye. I don't know, Matt. There's something about today. It feels a little bit different.
All right, fair enough. I like it a lot. Joe, come in, close the door, pack a bowl with me, and let's get baked. Let's talk Baker Mayfield, okay? No, straight up, let's do it, man. Because I really like what you're saying here. I really feel that you mentioned playing with house money. Mayfield and this team are just walking with that we've been here before attitude, even though they really haven't. It's kind of like the super seniors on campus, or all the freshmen are kind of still looking around. So Baker Mayfield, 253 and a half. Over or under this number, and why? And then pass that ball when you're done, please.
It's going to be over for me on this one, too. And 253 is a very achievable number in this circumstance. Let's reiterate and go back to the tape. The 27th ranked pass defense, a team that is tough to run the ball against. Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw. Now, Baker Mayfield could also make mistakes. We know that. But That's the one thing he's been better about this year. It's funny. He's only had one game all season where he threw 2 picks, and that was game against New Orleans a couple weeks ago. So outside of that, no multiple interception game from Baker Mayfield. So I think that's a very important thing. That's the thing that's really, I think, been the most frustrating part of Baker Mayfield in his career, which is in college, there's certain throws you can make, there's certain risks you can take that you just can't take in the NFL. And he kind of learned that the hard way, I think, in Cleveland. And, sometimes you got to be humbled, and he's bounced around a little bit. People forget the stint in Carolina and then a little stint in LA, and he's kind of bounced around a little bit. And now he's kind of settled here in Tampa, and he's got Godwin. He's got Rachaad White, who can also catch the football. And he's got Mike Evans, who he's made the most of, not to mention Cade Otton, not to mention some other wide receivers that he's made relevant at certain times. So 253.5, I think, is a really easy over for me in this one. Let's look at the game log, shall we? Against Green Bay a few weeks ago, December 17th, 381, 283, 309. Then the 137 against Carolina, but we all know he came up lame in that game with the ankle issue. So I'm not going to put too much on him on that one because he was playing hurt. So as long as he's healthy, look at last week against Philly, another bad secondary. What did he do, Matt? 337 against Philly last week. So this is one that I think is a little low. This is one, if you want to look for more plus money, you start pushing those alt yards. And when you start pushing them, you're going to start finding, I think, some good situations there. You're going to find some plus money when you push this to the 270, 280 range, even up to 300. I think you can get away with in this one. And I think that's what you're probably looking to do here, because if Detroit is indeed, the favorite for a reason, and if they are playing from behind, then why don't you continue to push the football? Right now, over on FanDuel, you can get plus 275 for the passing yards, of plus 116. For 300-yard game, you're getting plus 210. So you can double up your money there on this. And from a fantasy perspective, I think that's a good spot here for Baker Mayfield to push that 300 total. I like the 275 better. I don't want to get too greedy, but I think the 253 is just way too low for Baker Mayfield.
Joe, yes or no? Do they do ladder betting in football for passing yards?
Oh, sure.
Yards,
oh, yeah.
They do. This would be
you can. Sure. You can do ladder betting anywhere that there's an alternate. We did it very successfully on Betting Pros podcast. Remember the week where Devon Achane just absolutely lost his mind?
Yes.
Went for 200. Well, we were very much on that one. Now, we bet it up to 150 at the time, and obviously we still had room to go. But that original line, Matt, just for perspective, was set at 45.5 that day.
All right, something for folks to look into. No, because you learn something new here on the show. For those that aren't familiar, go look up ladder betting, and it is exactly what it sounds like. And Joe's giving you another way to get into the plus money. And wagerers know that sometimes you get caught chasing that. But if there is a logical way to get there, why not? All right, back to our conversation of over or unders. Stay with this game here. Jahmyr Gibbs, 44.5 rushing yards. And it's funny because you said that the HM prop was 45, so it's almost as if you have a clairvoyance. 44.5 over or under here. Smashes this? Question mark?
Now, I'm going to go the under here. I think Gibbs works more in the passing game. I think you attack that. Look, they're 5th against the rush, Tampa Bay. They're good up front. Again, both these teams are good up front. This is why you can't love every over. As sexy as it is, and, my co-host Scott Bogman on Betting Pros always says, life's too short for unders. But I also work with Andrew Erickson there, we call him the Undertaker because he loves unders all day long. And he's made a ton of money this year on the unders. And I think when you're looking at Gibbs here, I would lean towards the under. And the reason why is because that front is so good, because I think the nature of this game is going to be a little bit more back and forth. And I think with David Montgomery, it's a little tougher. Now, he hasn't crossed this number in his last 3 games. Before that, 80 yards, 100 yards, but that was also when David Montgomery was hurt. So once Montgomery came back and was 100% healthy again, it's not quite the same backfield again. I think you're in a bit of a split. It's late in the year. There's a lot of reasons to not go with this one. Either stay away or maybe go to the under on this one instead. And for those of you who are trying to understand what the ladder bet is, in case you're just joining us for the first time, that's where you're talking about taking a number that's low, like the Baker Mayfield, the 250 number we're talking about in that range. You bet it at the 250, you bet it at 260, 70, 80, 90, all the way up until 300 or wherever you're comfortable with. And as you start to get the plus money, you can do one or two things. You can either maintain that level of units, or you can decrease that number of units, depending on what you're comfortable with. And every time you hit another milestone, cha-ching, 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 an angel gets his wings, Matt. That's what happens every time.
All right, fair enough. With a couple of minutes left, let's unravel a bunch of things since our producer already has a absolute disdain for me, and I can't imagine why. To the counterpart of Gibbs, Rachaad White, 53.5 rushing yards, over or under. And then, just to make life hectic, talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown and his prop as well.
Look, the Rachaad White one is another one where we run up against a really good front. Now, he gets all the volume, so this one's a little bit more complicated than the Jahmyr Gibbs one. So Rachaad White is the guy. 53.5, I think, is very achievable. He has gone over this in the last 2 games against Carolina, against Philly. But before that, he was under in the last 2 games before that, against New Orleans, against Jacksonville. So this is a tricky one. I would lean towards the over, but again, I don't love this one. I'm sticking with the 2 quarterbacks. Those are the 2 props I like the most because you have more options to get that. This is more about script. This is more about also health of running backs, which is always tricky. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, you mentioned before, this is a high number, 92.5. I'm still going to go over. I think he gets over 100 today. Now, that's the danger is, what makes him such a good investment in DFS is this number, 92.5, that you're seeing in the prop market. That's why you want him to building these lineups with Amon-Ra St. Brown today, because Vegas is telling you he's going to have a good day. But it makes wagering hard because he has to be premium. I think he is premium today in that matchup. And lastly, Mike Evans, another guy too, 68.5. I would stay away from the Mike Evans number of 68.5. Instead, I would bet the anytime touchdown props for him because he has been that dude. For Mike Evans to be successful today, it's less about the yardage and more about the touchdowns, and everybody knows that. He is up and down. So instead, I'd rather be looking for the anytime touchdown prop when it comes to him. So when we return, we're going to talk about the Bills and Chiefs, the props for that game, a little fantasy over-under. We'll be right back after this.
The Lions were going to blow out the Rams, and in the first half I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game, and I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
And see what happens with the Lakers. They got to make a move, folks, because if you think this team, that they're going to run out night after night, is going to win the Western Conference, I can't see it, folks. I don't even know if they even make the final 8 of the playoffs with the way they've been playing. There's got to be major changes made in La La Land, but there isn't a lot of tradable parts.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline, and I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell,
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
You have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took them
time.
yard for a grand
slam.
In the bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
that was
Late
better.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
Yeah.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on.
There's no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Stryker and Joe Pisapia with you here, having a ton of fun. Great reaction on social media to the over-under segment, so why not continue the conversation, Joe? Let's talk about Josh Allen. Now, we have essentially written a game script for this game, but of course, that's why the games are played on the field and not on paper. Josh Allen, 227.5 passing yards, 227.5 through the air, over or under for Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen was a guy we loved last week. Now, this week he's going up against the fourth-ranked pass defense, right? So a little bit different. It's not like you're going up against Pittsburgh, who was a sieve and didn't have T.J. Watt rushing the quarterback, and that's why we love Josh Allen last week, because if you don't put pressure on Josh Allen can sit in the pocket, make throws, go run amok, and that's basically what he did. I mean, Josh Allen only threw for 200 yards last week, but he also ran for 74. He had that 150-yarder. It was really opening things up. This is a number 2 that I think is, again, if you look back last time against Kansas City, he went for 233, and this one was on the road. Conditions are a little bit different here in this one, too. 227.5, I think, is a spot-on number. I stay away from this number because I think it's right on. I think the rushing equity that Josh Allen brings, and also the mistakes that Josh Allen can bring in big games when he is rushed, when he doesn't have the time in the pocket. It's a very different set of circumstances. Last week, no picks. The week before, 2 picks. You know, he's had 4 interceptions in his last 3 games leading into the playoffs. So there's a lot to unpack here, because every time you throw an interception, you're taking away that opportunity to hit this total. And you're taking the ball out of your offense's hands, and you're taking away chances. And that's the thing that worries me a little bit here. Look, Josh Allen, again, all the credit in the world to him. He's put the team on his back. He's carried them. It's been a tough season for the Buffalo Bills. Emotionally, physically, they've gone through the ringer. They had a big win last week. They had to move the playoff game. It's just a lot. The Buffalo Bills have dealt with a lot. But I think this number right here is so spot on. If anything, I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I might lean towards the under. Because also, no Gabe Davis in this game, too. Stephon Diggs has not been good down the stretch. So really, you're looking at Dalton Cade, Khalil Shakir, James Cook, like, it really hasn't gotten done, you know, for the most part. So I think you lean towards the under, if anything, here. But to me, this number is a stay away. There is a number attached with Josh Allen that I like a little bit more. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in a second. But I think that's my personal take on this one. Anytime touchdown scorer for him, that's a different situation. Obviously, when it comes to Josh Allen, you're going to get minus 110 on him right now on places like FanDuel. That's a better bet for me than trying to screw around with this, because Josh Allen not getting in the end zone today is a little bit more unlikely than him necessarily reaching or going over this passing total today.
Insightful analysis and a great pivot, honestly. And I agree with you, too. The anytime touchdown, one of my personal favorite plays in the sport. All right, Patrick Mahomes' number. You ready for it? You have a number in your head? I hope you do, because here's the number. 262.5. Over under, Joe.
Well, the trick is a lot of people, I think, will bet the under on this, because they'll say, well, it hasn't been the greatest year for Patrick Mahomes in this offense. Now, the Buffalo Bills, 7th ranked against the pass here, but again, sustained some injuries last week. I don't know how healthy they are. He hasn't reached this total, though, in the last 3 games. 262.5 is what you're looking for. He just hit 262 last week against Miami. Again, really tough conditions. 245 before that, 235 before that, then 300 against New England, and 271 against who? The Buffalo Bills, Matt, the Buffalo Bills. So I'm going to go over on this one. I think this is Patrick Mahomes saying, yeah, Lamar might win the MVP this year. How often does the MVP win the Super Bowl? Not often nowadays, if you look. it's this kind of scenario where I think things are set up really in an interesting fashion for the Kansas City Chiefs. I like them playing the underdog. I like them having to go on the road for a change. I like it's us against the world mentality instead of the everyone's coming for us all the time, which gets exhausting. I think you saw it in the Patriots dynasty over the years. You know, they had cycled through things where they were the top dog, top of the mountain, and everybody came for them, and it kind of took its toll on them. You know, remember those tough playoff losses against the Baltimore Ravens that they took in certain years? I think it took its toll on the New England Patriots. And then they found themselves again when they had to play a little bit of an underdog, and guess what? All of a sudden, things were a little bit of a different story for them in that second part of the dynasty. And I'm not saying we're in the second part of the dynasty already with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think we're still in the first part, but I think the mentality is there. I'm going to go over this number. I think Rushy Rice, I think Travis Kelce, all of those guys show up today and do what they're supposed to do. And I think they have finally funneled everything. They know where the ball's going. They know what they're confident in. No more of them mucking around with the Kadarius Tonys and the Sky Moores of the world. Enough of that nonsense. MVS will have a couple shots. I'm sure he'll drop half of them. But for the most part, it's going to be Pacheco. It's going to be Rice. It's going to be Kelce. That's what this offense is. They've consolidated. I think it's a good thing for Mahomes.
All right. Brutal but honest, and that's why we love you, Joe. All right. I think this next one, this is Josh Allen's rushing yard over-under. I think this is contingent upon pocket integrity. I mean, you talked about how the league is moving to a mobile quarterback, but the game is still about pocket integrity. If you can keep a nice, clean pocket, good quarterbacks can do great things. Josh Allen, 45.5 rushing yards outside of a few collapsed pockets. This is in his game. So, thoughts?
It is. Last time he faced Kansas City, they were in Kansas City. He had 10 rushing attempts. It was only for 32 yards, so they did a good job of containing him. Okay. I think it's going to be a little bit harder this time around in this climate in Buffalo. I think it's going to be a little bit of a different story here. So I like the over in this one. I like the rushing over far more than the 227.5 you're getting on the passing side. So 45.5 is very much in play. You know, if he gets anywhere close to this 10, I think he's going to smash it. And not that, it's going to be like last week where he gets the one big 50. I don't think the Chiefs defense is going to give that up. But they did do a very good job of containing him when he got out. Because, again, 10 rush attempts is a lot. That's one of the highest numbers that he's had all season. He did have 11 against New England and 15 against Miami in the last month. But other than that, he did not have one single rushing attempt game of double digits. It's come on lately. And I think, you see what Lamar does last night. You're Josh Allen. You say, hey, ball's in my hands. I'm going to do everything I can to win this football game. And Josh Allen sometimes does too much. I think that's where things might get them into trouble. But for me, I'm going to go over on this one. That's a much more comfortable number for me than is the passing number.
All right. Now, Joe, I am old enough to remember the name Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? I don't think many people will remember the name Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But now it is about Isaiah Pacheco. And all kidding aside, it seems like a distant memory, doesn't it? Isaiah Pacheco, 62.5 rushing yards, over or under. Where did Helaire go? LSU?
He was part of that amazing team, which, by the way, was Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson.
And Clyde.
Talk about the greatest fantasy team ever. People were talking about, that LSU team was really good. Yeah, they were really good. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson on the same team with Joe Burrow. Yeah. No wonder why Clyde Edwards-Helaire scored so many touchdowns. Looking back on it, I think we have a little bit more perspective of who was really kind of pulling the chains there. But Isaiah Pacheco, 62.5. I want to go over here. Bills are middling against the run. They're getting him the football. 18 carries for 130 against Cincinnati, 24 carries for 89. I think you're going to see him in that 20 carry range today. I think that's what you want to do. You want to keep Josh Allen off the field. You want to take down clock. You want to make sure that you're, that time of possession, I think, is going to be crucial in this game. So you do that by running the football. You're on the road. You run the football. You take the crowd out of it a little bit. It's going to be cold. You run the football. You make the defense tired. You commit to that, and Andy Reid's a great coach. He's a Hall of Fame first ballot coach. He knows what's going on here, and he knows how important it is to run the football in January. So I think he's going to. So the over for Pacheco, I think, is a really good number here. I like it. You can also get plus 105 for anytime touchdown for him. Also not a bad mark. That one's over on FanDuel and some other spots as well.
All right, moving on here. While I will admit I'm off-put by the crossover into pop culture and the relationship. Not saying anything wrong. It's just not my cup of tea. But Travis Kelce is a football player. You have said this in the Black Book. He's going to be head, shoulders, and torso above his peers. 63.5 receiving yards, over or under here for Travis Kelce.
Yeah, this is another one, too, where the yardage totals just really haven't been here. Now, he did go over this against Miami, so that's encouraging. We're going in the right direction. He was under that total, though, the 3 weeks ahead of that. And the last time he went over this total was against who? The Buffalo Bills. That's right, where he went for 83 that day back in December, on the 10th of December. So 63.5 is well within range. I think it's a low enough number that I would get to the over. I'm not saying smash. I'm not saying like we're looking at 100. I think that's risky. I'm not saying you can't get there. He's Travis Kelce. He's still the best tight end on the planet, even if he might have lost a step. And forget about all those other distractions and nonsense. Look, why is it different? If any other player's girlfriend or wife is at the game, they're there supporting their man. Like, isn't it nice?
And spend time talking about it. No, the point is,
that's why he doesn't watch the show. Why do we have to take time?
Here we go. Why do we take time away from the game where we're all sitting down to watch the sport? Once or twice you want to show someone significant other, that's great. Right. 6, 7 times and taking up conversation about it,
exactly.
That's not why I'm watching.
And bad on the media too. How many times did they show Eminem last week in that crowd? Every single time I had to turn around and see Eminem.
Same.
You're right.
Same. I agree.
Nobody complained about that. I didn't hear anybody complain about that on the internet.
Rushy Rice, 69.5 receiving yards. Over or under. I think you love this. Am I wrong? You can sing as many songs as you wish. Go ahead.
I do. Player's going to play. Play. We're going to have Rushy Rice here against the Buffalo Bills. Again, they're pretty good against the pass, but Rushy Rice is a target machine lately. It's just been unbelievable. Last game against Miami in the cold, 8 catches on 12 targets for 130. 5 catches for 127 the week before that. Now, down game against down game against Vegas there, 6 catches for 57 yards. Getting very excited about Rushy Rice. But here's the thing. When it comes to Rice in this scenario, we knew that game against Vegas was bad. There were turnovers in that game. It was a weird contest. You go another week further behind that, 9 catches for 91, 7 catches for 72. The consistency has been there. So although 69.5 is a higher number, Rice has earned this number. So to me, there's no reason not to feel confident. I love him in DFS today. He brings touchdown equity. He brings volume. He's the guy now. Now, he's not Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have that kind of speed. But Rushy Rice has kind of filled that gap of that possession wide receiver that this offense needs. And a guy that's reliable. And a guy that in the red zone is incredibly dangerous. So Rice to me is another one of these players. Plus 130 right now you're getting for anytime touchdown.
Nice.
That is an even better bet than this one, because you're going to get minus money on this yardage on the over. Why not just go for the plus right for the touchdown? Because Rice has shown you that he has that ability, and Rice is scoring touchdowns in an outstanding clip over this last stretch of the season. So I like Rice today. I like the over and the touchdown. In fact, you can put them together, get a really nice number, probably push that about 3.5 to 1 in most sites. So that's probably the best way to attack Rice today.
Love it. Love your beautiful mind. All right. To whomever Dalton Cade's significant other is, I want a hard cam steady ISO on this person for the entire afternoon. Anything Dalton Cade does, we quickly go to a 2-shot or a cutaway of his significant other. I think it's going to mean ratings. Dalton Cade, 39.5 receiving yards, over or under. Joe, you on board?
Stay away. I think this is another one that's kind of spot on. He has the ability to go way over this today. So that is there. If I'm leaning one way, it's going to be the over. But again, I think the best number when it comes to Kincaid, the tricky part with Josh Allen teams is that when they get down in that red zone, it's a lot of Josh Allen running footballs, especially in the goal line area. But Kincaid is interesting because why? You look at the anytime touchdown prop for him, it's at plus 290 right now. So you're almost getting 3 to 1 on Kincaid there for the touchdown. So best bang for your buck is that. You want to go over because it's a lower number, 39.5, pair it together. Not a bad day at the office for sure. But Kincaid's got to step up because Diggs hasn't been that guy. Davis hasn't been that guy. Somebody's got to step up here in this passing game. Last week it's Kincaid. We'll see if it's him again. We come back for 3 and out. Right here on FST.
We're going to blow out the Rams. And in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
look out and see what happens with the Lakers. They've got to make a move, folks, because if you think this team, that they're going to run out night after night, is going to win the Western Conference, I can't see it, folks. I don't even know if they even make the Final 8 of the playoffs with the way they've been playing. There's got to be major changes made in La La Land, but there isn't a lot of tradable parts.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Last year, the Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline, and I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early line,
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire,
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I
decisions.
have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live, prime time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
late
good betting.
night.
We waited for the 1.5. We got paid.
You did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on.
There's no taking weeks off in golf betting, ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, time flies when you're having fun, especially when you're surrounded with good, decent, genuine people. All right, folks, it is now time for 3 and Out. FST has done what we needed to do for you. We built DFS lineups. We talked over-unders. Before we turn it over, Joe, the 3 things that you're looking for today.
Well, number one, it's got to be the theme of the show, right? The Chiefs as underdogs, something we don't see very often, something I think is just flat wrong. I think the Chiefs are the better defense. I think the Chiefs have the better quarterback. I think the Chiefs, let me say this again. I know the Chiefs have the better quarterback. I know the Chiefs have the better coach. So it's just a matter of, can they pick themselves up by the haunches and build on what happened last week, which was the Chiefs in their building in the playoffs looking like the Chiefs again. And I know it was just the Miami Dolphins, and I know the Dolphins were not prepared to play in 0-degree temperatures and all that stuff. But maybe that's just the spark they needed. Maybe they are the team that can just flip the switch. Maybe the Chiefs just need to play underdog a little bit and just get a little sigh of relief and not be the top of the mountain all the time. It's exhausting. Just ask Matt Stryker. He knows what it's like to be at the top of the mountain all the time. People coming for you, gunning for you all the time. But yes, let's see those Chiefs as underdogs today, get a big victory, and then have to go on the road next week to Baltimore. What a game that would be. So I'm sorry, Bills fans. I know Gabe's probably mad at me and a lot of guys at this network who are big Buffalo Bills fans. Josh Allen moments. That's what I'm looking for. Not just good, but bad too. Will Josh Allen have that one big moment where he's rushing for 50 yards and looks spectacular, and maybe the Bills do win this football game? Or does he have that other Josh Allen moment? You know the one I'm talking about. The one where he tries to do too much. The one where he tries to hang on after almost getting sacked 3 times and then chuck a football up in the air he shouldn't. Those are Josh Allen moments too. And last, can the Lions continue through the playoffs? This is going to be a test today. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not going to lay down. Baker Mayfield's going to bring it to you. So, winning last week was great. Can you do it again now? And can you go to the NFC Championship game? What a story that would be for the Lions. And let me tell you, Lions have a chance to beat San Fran if they get there. They got to get there first. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. From Matt, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Enjoy football today.